And welcome back. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to do a relative positioned widget with absolute positioned children. And this is a continuation of our series on how to do absolute, static, fixed, and relative positions widgets and divs using the widget library. So let's go ahead and get started. So what I have here is a Komodo Edit project called Position 3. It has box 1 and box 2. We've added the Witty border header, the Witty CSS decoration style so that we can set the border, and in this example we've set the background color. And I've made the border and the background color the same for both boxes. So we have a red border and a red background, green border and a green background. And the project is already up and running in the browser. So if I do a refresh, you should have a box 1 and a box 2, and they are statically positioned by default. We haven't set the position scheme yet, but they are statically positioned, so they just follow the flow of the page. Now, if we go back, I'm going to make some changes to this. I'm going to change our box 2 from a Witty text to a Witty container widget. And the reason I'm doing that is you can't really add a child widget to a Witty text widget. So you have to use another widget that's actually capable of doing that. In our case, you can use the Witty container widget. This is nothing new. If you've been using the app root, this is nothing but a Witty container widget, and we've done that quite a few times in our tutorials. So if you go ahead and save this, and you don't need to make any changes because a container widget is, I won't say more powerful, it has more functionality than a Witty text widget. So it has the same functionality in terms of setting the border, the background color. And if we shut down the server and do a compile, you should see not a real big drastic difference between the two. Let's see. Oh, and actually you cannot have any text. You have to remember that. You cannot have any text. So let's try that again. You can just give it a parent, and that should be enough to get you started with that. Just take a quick second. Alright, there's our executable. We've run the server. If we do a refresh, and you can see it's still there. There's the border, there's the actual container widget, but it doesn't have any text. Okay, so now we have our box 2. And the reason I want to do a container widget is because I need to add children inside of this div that are going to be absolutely positioned. So far, both of these are statically positioned, but we're going to change that. So we're going to change the position scheme. So we're going to call set position scheme. We're going to change it to relative. And you can do the same thing for box 2. Okay, and I'm going to change the coordinates for box 1 at first. So we're going to call set margin, pass in a Witty length, and we want to move it 50 pixels to the left. So we give it a value of 50 using a double, call Witty left pixel to give it a unit, and we're going to move it over to the left, and we also want to move it 70 pixels down from the top. So we call set margin again, and we're going to move this 70 pixels. Now the unit is going to be a pixel, and we're going to call top. Save that and compile, and we can essentially get rid of the server. We close the server down, and it shouldn't take but a second. Okay, now our project is compiled. Go in here and do a refresh. See, it pushed it down. Going back to look at our code. Pushed it down. It pushed it to the left 50 pixels and down 70 pixels from the top. And so, because it's relative, it just follows the widget that was on top of it. And you see, box 2 is just right below box 1. And so, the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to change the position of box 2. So, box 2, set margin. I'm going to move it 70 pixels. To the left. And we're going to move it minus 30 from the top. And that is a pixel, and from the top. I'll move that. Going to compile this. Going to turn the server off. Again, shouldn't take but a second. Okay, there's our executable. If we run the server, do a refresh, now you can see box 2 has been moved over. You know, it's no big change. And what I'm going to do now is add some children to it. So we have box 2. So the reason we did a container widget is because, you know, like I said, we cannot add children to a witty text widget. So I actually need to add some children widgets to box 2. So we have child 1 is equal to a witty text. And we're going to, actually I'm going to leave it as the default. Put in some header tags so we can actually see it on the screen. I'm going to change the styling, and you don't have to do it like this, but this is the way I'm doing it for this tutorial. Going to call this child 1, and I'm going to add this to our box 2. So we're going to call add widget because that's available to our container widget. Child 2. And we need to make another change. When you add this child, because we're going to set some styling on it, you need to resize the parent or box 2. And you could do it using a witty length. You know, you could go that far and do all that, but all you have to really do is just put in your coordinates. We want it to be 320 pixels wide by 250 pixels long. And then we're going to make some changes to child 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some copy and pasting. I'm going to copy this, save us a little bit of time. I'm going to call this child 2, or child 1, excuse me. Don't think I'm child 2 because I gotta do that one. Okay, and we have child 1. And we're going to make this yellow so it can stand out a little bit more. I'm going to leave the background color as it, well, actually, this is what I'll do. I'll make the border blue make the background color green. How about that? Or I'll make it black. I'll make the background color black. That way you can see it a little bit better. And I'm going to change the coordinates to 50 pixels over to the left. And we're going to do -30 from the top. And if we go ahead and compile that, stop the server, and let me make sure everything is lined up. We actually have an error. Let's see what's going on. Child was not declared. Oh, okay. Yeah, my mind's on child 2. Let's think of child 1. Because I actually have a child 2 that I'm going to incorporate into this project. Make sure, okay. If it's running this wrong, it should compile fine. Okay, there's the project. Let's do a refresh. And as you can see, we have our box 2. And because this is a relative positioned widget, and this is a child widget, and it is absolutely positioned, it is only going to stay within the bounds of its parent. Even though it's absolutely positioned, you know, if this was outside of this div, it would be over here somewhere. But because it's within a relatively positioned parent, it's going to stay within its bounds. So this is like its own window. So if we go ahead and do another example, and this is what I was talking about, child 2. We have child 1. Do child 2. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some copy and pasting here. Okay. Then we have child 2. Going to add this child. Okay. And I'm going to again do some copy and pasting, just to save on a little bit of time. And this is going to be child 2. Okay, and the coordinates for this are going to be 320 pixels to the left and 50 pixels from the top. And I'm going to change this. The background color is going to be, let's see, let's make this green and make this yellow. That way you can see it a little bit better. And if we compile this, I'm going to turn off the server. See, what did I do? Line 17. Let's see, we have an error. Oh, I see. Didn't put a semicolon at the end. See if we run this again. Okay, what's our other error? Okay, we misspelled it. Child 2. Alright, let's compile this. This should work now. Alright, if we run the server, bring up Google Chrome, and oh, it didn't do exactly what I thought it was. Let's see, I think I did something wrong on my end. Let me see. Actually, I see the error. And it doesn't have anything to do with the border. I'm gonna change this to black. I actually did not make my children absolute. I see that now. I meant, let's see. All right, now our children are absolutely positioned inside of our div. So if I go in here and compile this again, and this should work. Let's cross our fingers and hope. Okay, all right. We run the server. If I do a refresh, okay, if you look at this, here's child 1, here's child 2. It's not perfect. It's kind of, the text is kind of being squeezed in there. But as you can see, it's not running beyond the bounds of its parent. It's staying right within our parent. So even though it kind of looks kind of crazy, you can look at it and say, okay, this is child 1 and we positioned it right here. This is child 2 and we positioned it right here. I mean, we could always go in here and change the coordinates and say, let's just say we want to move this 50 pixels down instead of it being in a negative position. We can go ahead and do a compile, and then let's close the server. Let's close the server. And this should compile. Okay, if we run this, and let's do a refresh. All right, you see it moved it 50 pixels down. So that's just showing you how you can actually move your widgets around using relative positioning. You see this one was relatively positioned. This one was as well. And inside of it had 2 children widgets that we absolutely positioned. And notice how they won't run outside of the bounds of their parent unless you position them that way. So this just gives you I know it was quite lengthy, but it gives you a general idea of how to use absolutely positioned children inside of a relatively positioned widget, and how you can just do a relatively positioned widget for the first one and for the second one. And you also saw how to use a container widget. We'll be using that extensively as we go along in our tutorials. So I'll see you in the next tutorial. I'll be talking about how to use a fixed positioned widget or div in the Witty library. See you then. Bye bye.